I'm here with Peter Golding at Bonhams and Butterfields. We're getting ready for your auction. Now this is actually in May out of New York, right?
Yes, that's right.
So this is
May
actually
14th.
May 14th?
Yes.
Now, should I like kneel at your feet or something? Because you have quite a history of doing everything.
I get totally.
So tell me about your collection that you have today, because it's over quite a few, shall we say, decades?
Yes, we can.
Yes. And I see behind you Pink Floyd, Grateful Dead. You know, can you give us some insight? Show us your favorites.
Sure. Well, obviously I've been collecting for 30 or 40 years. Obviously I was part of the British scene at the time, and so it wasn't very difficult to be involved and to enjoy it. And I had a lot of posters which I used to, because of my fashion side, some of the graphic designers did some work for me, and I managed to get some posters at the time, which I kept. And then suddenly in the 70s or 80s I suddenly said, wow, this is terrific, let's clean this all up and put it on the walls. And then I started carrying on some more, and I came to the States quite frequently because of my fashion work. And so I visited all the artists, Stanley Mouse, Rick Griffin's widow, Ida Griffin, Moscoso, Kelly, all these guys, and they were very pleased to see me because people weren't really honouring them in the same way as perhaps they do today. And although their posters were very successful, they had a lot of original art, which is the art that went for posters. And I always found, well, this is really of interest. And although in San Francisco there was a lot of interest, and always has been, perhaps outside through America and Europe, there hasn't been the same thing. A bit like American jazz, or it took the Rolling Stones and the Beatles to find Chuck Berry and Muddy Waters, you know. So America has some humongously brilliant culture, you know, which, just like we in England have a culture that perhaps is more appreciated in America than by ourselves. So you get this cross-cultural interest. So that's where it came from. And the social energy of the times. It wasn't just art, it wasn't just the revolution, it was a whole cultural thing, and it was a new birth of society, basically from the 60s, you know. And looking back, it was a pretty cool time, you know, politically and everything else, you know, at the time. It was,
that's right.
It was like rock and roll was the devil's music. You see the Jerry Lewis film. So that's where it all came from, and I kept that little revolutionary spirit, and you can see it on the walls. It's that energy, it's art, it's graphics, it's fabulous. It's no different to the great Muchas and all the great paintings of the turn of the century, the Toulouse-Lautrec posters in France, or the Banksys, which Bonhams recently had a big urban sale, who are still doing this urban art. This is urban art in the 60s, you know, and these guys were part of the band. They were almost like you know, an extra member of the band.
Well, there's also a resurgence now with all of them, well, quite a few of them touring now.
Yeah, sure. And their fame is legendary, and therefore the art has become more legendary, and they don't make it anymore.
So this is a good time.
This is all hand done, you know. This is guys poring over the work and doing the various color separations and energy and enthusiasm, and the era's still there, and people are doing it in different ways, and kids are on the computers making amazing modern art, so it's not like it's dead, it's something that carries on. But this is an era that's, many of these artists are still alive, most of them.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Just had an exhibition, Moscoso's doing stuff, Kelly, I mean, they're still doing it, obviously, in a different way than they used to. And in England, you've got Michael English and Nigel Weymouth, got some stuff there. So this is also, you have some British stuff here as well. So it was a great cross-cultural thing. I shall stop there.
Oh, no, you're doing great. Your personal favorites?
Well, I guess, I mean, you can't escape this masterpiece.
It really is, isn't it?
This is Rick Griffin's, one of his later items. It's basically the painting of his very famous Flying Eyeball poster, which was in the 60s, and this is then painted in the 80s for a big show.
This
is
really
done
cool.
by him, and if you look at the lettering and the way this is all transcribed, it's absolutely magnificent, and it's considered to be one of the greatest images of rock and roll. And this is,
it really is.
Rick Griffin's one of the great masters, and this is his painting of his great image. So if you put it all together, it's big, strong, in your face, and well admired.
And how'd you get so lucky to have this piece?
Well, I was lucky. and persistent, and you know, at the time, it's like anything, people aren't really that Keane, and I knew Ida Griffin, and there you go, you know. Similarly, you've got, these are, I mean, this is expensive by comparison. It's actually, well, the estimate's $250,000 to $350,000. You know,
But then it's part
but
of
then if
rock
you
and roll history.
If you compare that to Picasso's and other stuff going for millions, you know, this will probably be very highly bidded, and there's a lot of interest already. But here, if you come down the scale, and we don't have many posters, mostly in the collection it's art, that's the point. But this happens to be the first edition poster of what's called FD26. A lot of these posters had numbers given to them. And this is by Stanley Mouse and Alton Kelly, and it's signed by both of them. Very rare to ever find a poster, first edition, that's also signed by them. And that's, I think, at $8,000, you know, which is not expensive. I mean, in the sense that it could go for a lot more. It's been framed by Kelly. But then the magical bit is, this is the printing plate, which is something I really love. It's printed, used to print that poster.
Oh, that's really cool.
The main plate, we should say.
It's nice to actually have the two of them together.
They are two separate lots.
Right.
And that's like 12,000. But this is unique. There isn't another one. Effectively, they're usually with 2 or 3 plates, but this is what's called the major plate because it's got all the writing on, and again it's signed by the artists, which is phenomenal. You know, getting them when they were up for signing it, and then they framed it for me. So if you like, you put it all together, it becomes a unique passion, and that's, I guess, what's under offer here is the excitement of it all. You know, so it takes a completely different perspective. You know, so someone having that in their den at home or in the front room, it's you're a Grateful Dead fan, and there are a lot of them.
Oh yeah, there's and you're a big fan of them
Wall
too.
Street, they're out on the big IT companies. So and the Grateful Dead, which pretty well represented here, is a particular American phenomenon. Fantastic, it's one of the most amazing bands because of its not just as a musical band, as its sort of social impact, and had a huge following, and I would say they were very they made a great they made a great contribution to rock and roll art because they just loved it. So they were always getting different artists to do different projects, and they carried it right the way through into the 80s. You know, right the way through to the 1990 tour, which is another item.